That's Prof JC, and I always say these videos are going to be short, and then I start talking and I get so passionate about what we're talking about, but this should be a short video today. The first thing that I want you to do is I want you to look back on the life mapping that was due last week, the life mapping that you turned in, okay? And I just want you, for the first thing that we'll do for our assignment this week, is just to reflect on the life mapping. And here's what I want you to answer. 2 questions. What did you learn about yourself in the process of life mapping? So that's question number 1, okay? What did you learn about yourself in the process of life mapping? And then number 2, what are you going to change now that you've kind of mapped out your life? What have you looked at in your life maybe that currently is happening, and what are you planning on changing based on the life map, okay? Now, I want to encourage you to really dive into these reflections. I've been doing this long enough to know that there's almost like our business students tend to be more analytical, and our leadership students tend to be more people-oriented. And so a lot of times with our reflection, it comes easier, it comes more naturally for leadership students. It comes easier for me. That's why I teach, leadership. I think I'm very in tune with that side. But here's one thing that I know in studying some of the great business minds over the last 100 to 200 years. Charles Koch, John D. Rockefeller, Pierpont Morgan, Charlie Munger, who just recently passed away last year, who I am a huge fan of. I'm reading one of his books. I guess it's not a book that he wrote, but it's a book about his speeches and his life and mental models and all of that. And these are all billionaires, right? I love to study billionaires to see what is it that they've done differently than the rest of us mere mortals. And the one thing that I find consistently with billionaires, okay, is that they are people who've got a worldview, a global view, right? They're people who dominate in their business, but they are also people who spend time reflecting. And part of what drives them is that reflection on their worldview. And so they see the world and they see the way it needs to be. And so they go about shaping the world into the image that they see. And because of all that, because of the value that they add to millions of people around the globe, they become billionaires. Now, some of you will disagree with that, and that's okay. But that's my perception of this. And so I would say that the top of the top of the top of the top people who've reached the highest that they could go in their field, these are all people who reflect. So I want to encourage you to do that, okay? So that's the first couple of questions that I want you to think back on your life map. Again, I'm not asking you to do these life map things and all the reflection we're doing just so you can spend more time writing, right? I know every single one of you got a ton of things on your plate right now. I do this because I know what I've read and what I've seen in incredibly successful people. Most of them, again, I don't have any data on this. Maybe at some point down the road, I'll do some research on this. But what I have seen, just in my own experience, the most successful people out there are the ones who are spending time reflecting. So it's important for us to do this. Okay. So I want you to reflect on that. And then I was looking in one of the books that I recommended. There were no required books for this course, but one of the books that I recommended was this book right here called The Happiness of Pursuit. A little play on words, the pursuit of happiness, the happiness of pursuit. And what this book talks about, it really talks about what the title shares is that it's not just about pursuing happiness, it's about finding happiness in everything that we're going about, in the success that we are seeking, that most of us, I would say on this call, that most of us in this class, in the success that we are seeking, it's finding happiness on that journey, okay? So that's going to be important for us. But in chapter 5, he talks about, the author of this book talks about self-reliance, which I think is one of the most important things that you can have in life. If you're going to achieve your purpose, if you're going to achieve your vision, which is what we're talking about in this class, you have to be a person who is self-reliant. Okay. At the very top of this, there are two, one's a quote, or I guess that both of these are quotes. One's a quote from somebody, one's an actual, it's a lesson from the chapter. And here's the quote on chapter 5. The most courageous act is to think for yourself. Okay. And that was by, well, okay, hold on one second. The most courageous act is to think for yourself aloud. Okay. And aloud is, when he says aloud, it's not aloud as like, do you allow yourself to do it? He's saying aloud as in think out loud, think for yourself. And then whatever those thoughts are, think out loud about those thoughts. And that was written by Coco Chanel. And then the lesson from this chapter is not everyone needs to believe in your dream, but you do. So as we're mapping out purpose, as we're mapping out where we're going, and I hope that some of you really take this seriously, okay? That you really are going to live a life filled with intention, not just a life where you go through it and just take the next promotion and take the next job. And maybe you end up successful, maybe you don't. And by success, I don't mean money, cars, houses, all that kind of stuff. It could mean that if it means that for you, but it's you reaching your full and highest potential, whatever that is. And I think that is much more important than success. And I think that when people work towards that end, all the other stuff will come. But it's first about reaching your full and highest potential. And part of that is you've got to be willing to be self-reliant. You can't be needy. And unfortunately, we live in an age where so many people are needy. And that's why social media is such a big thing, because people can get on there and they can get that quick like right now, right? I can post something cool, post a picture of my family, post a picture of my vacation, and all of a sudden people are liking my stuff, and now I feel good about myself, and I'm not really achieving anything big, achieving anything major that will take long-term intentional thinking. Self-reliance means that you do these things, you do them in the dark, you do them when no one's watching you, you do them when the attention's not on you, but you're able to do these things, okay? You're able to do big things, do exciting things, build things, have successes and failures, because that's the thing about having a big life. There's going to be successes and failures. One of the things that this book talks about when it talks about self-reliance, it just lists some stories here, and I'm not going to go through all those, but one of the things it talks about is embracing rejection, that if you're going to live a life where you're pursuing happiness, you're pursuing success, part of that is going to be rejection, okay? And you've got to get comfortable with the feeling of being uncomfortable. You have to get comfortable with rejection. It's going to happen. Part is thinking this idea, if I didn't do it, would I always wonder, right? So some of you, if you really took to heart the life mapping, you may have looked out and said, wow, I have some really big dreams inside. And then what happens is this anxiety comes, and that's typically what holds most people back. Right? And this book talks about it. It says that life is risky. It is, right? That's why you must believe. That's another thing that the book talks about. But people, they set big dreams for themselves. They can see what their full and highest potential is, and then they get scared. Okay? That's for all of us. It's everywhere. I do trainings. I've told you this before. I do trainings for these big companies, and we'll have senior vice presidents from Fortune 500 companies on these calls or in the room. And they'll talk about imposter syndrome and how I want to get here and I want to go here, and getting there is extremely hard. But then once I get there, I'm scared and anxious, because in my mind is telling me that I really can't do this. I'm really not supposed to be doing this. And so if we're not careful what we do in those situations, we pull ourselves back to what's comfortable, and then we never achieve our dreams and goals, our full and highest potential. That's the key. So self-reliance is really important. It's knowing ourselves, knowing our full and highest potential, and pursuing it at all costs, and not worrying about what other people think about us, because there's going to come times when we're going to do something that's going to look silly to other people. I'll never forget when I walked away from a full-time job and a really good salary because I knew I was supposed to be a consultant and I was supposed to teach. My dream was to be a professor and be full-time and then traveling and consulting in my free time. And that's my life now. And so I can talk about that and I can tell you about how great that is and how fun that is. But what I don't necessarily talk about a lot are the 2 years of pain and every single day getting up and not knowing if I made the right decision. And every single day having the anxiety of, can I pay the bills? Can I pay the rent? Can I pay my car payment? Getting behind on bills, having to call collectors and saying, hey, I'll be able to pay you here, but I'm waiting on this check to come in. I mean, it was just a nightmare of a time. But that's part of it. And so if you're going to go out there and you're going to do big things with your life, you're going to have to go through those risky times. And in the middle of that, there's going to be very few people cheering you on. The reason why I brought that up was not so that you would, it was more so that when I did that, I had people telling me it was the stupidest thing that I could have done. People said, no, you need to give up those dreams. You need to be satisfied with what you have. You need to be happy right where you are. I can't tell you how many people told me, and these were Christian people in church that would say these kind of things. Okay. Be satisfied, be content, stop trying to pursue more and pursue more. And people are going to say that. And if we're people who aren't self-reliant, then we're going to listen to that and we're going to do what they tell us to do because we want their approval more than we want to reach our full and highest potential. And we can't do that. So I found this great article here and I'm going to link to it in our assignment this week. So if you want to read it, it's just a PDF. It's called Self-Reliance by Ralph Waldo Emerson, and it was written in 1841. And so I just want to read about 3 paragraphs from this. It's actually about 21 pages in a PDF. I'll link to it. I recommend if you really want to take this seriously, download this thing and read it. It is a fascinating read. It's a good read. It will challenge you as a person. Are you a self-reliant person? So if we come here on this PDF, page 2, here's what Ralph Waldo Emerson has to say. There's a time in every man's education when he arrives at the conviction that envy is ignorance, that imitation is suicide. That now it just says he because this was 1840s. It was all white men, okay? I don't say that out of anger. I'm just saying that's the way it is. So don't get mad at me and say he didn't say he, she, no, I'm just reading from the paper here. Okay, so let me reread that. There's a time in every man's education when he arrives at the conviction that envy is ignorance, that imitation is suicide, that he must take himself for better, for worse, as his portion. That though the wide universe is full of good, no kernel of nourishing corn can come to him, but through his toil bestowed on that plot of ground, which is given to him to till. The power which resides in him is new in nature, and none but he knows what that is which he can do, nor does he know until he has tried. Not for nothing, one face, one character, one fact makes much impression on him and another. I want to come back to this. And here's what this is saying. It's just basically saying you will never know who you are until you go out there and you do it yourself. There's that line in there. It says this, imitation is suicide. Here's the first question from this. You already have 2 questions that you're answering on reflection of life mapping. But here's the first question from this. What does that mean? Okay. I just want you to think about that. When Ralph Waldo Emerson says imitation is suicide, I want you to dive deep into that, write a few sentences. What does that mean? And what does that mean to you? So what do you think that means to him? And what does that mean to you? What does that mean to him? And what does it mean to you? Imitation is suicide. Moving down, he says these words, trust thyself. Every heart vibrates to that iron string. Trust thyself. Every heart vibrates to that iron string. Accept the place the divine providence has found for you, the society of your contemporaries, the connection of events. Great men have always done so and confided themselves childlike to the genius of their age, betraying their perception that the absolutely trustworthy was seated at their heart, working through their hands, predominating in all their being. I want to go back to that when he says, trust thyself. Every heart vibrates to that iron string. And here's the question. Here's another question I want you to answer. Why is it so difficult for people to trust themselves? And then why is it so difficult for you to trust yourself? As you've looked back on your own journey, and maybe you're not there, but I guarantee at some point in your journey, you were shaky in terms of making decisions. It was hard to trust yourself. Why was it hard for you to trust yourself? Some of you are there now. If you're honest, you would say that you are there right now. You struggle with trusting your own self. Why is that the case? Okay. Now here's what I don't want you to do. I realize that we are a faith-based university, and I'm all for it. I realize that we are a Christian university, and I'm all for it, obviously. Okay. But I have a view of faith that there is a God out there. He sent his son Jesus, right? I believe in all of that. But I have a view of faith that says God doesn't just do everything for us. There's that saying out there. It's kind of a quote that you hear a lot of times in churches, let go and let God. And it's this whole thing about, all you got to do is pray. All you got to do is let go and let God do everything else. That, I'm going to tell you right now, that's bad theology. And typically where you go see that, you're going to see a lot of people who've done very little with their lives. Okay. I grew up in a church like that. Let go and let God, everybody. And everybody was broke, poor, unhappy, toxic. They gossiped about each other, overweight, all this kind of stuff. Okay. So as I grew older and hopefully grew wiser, I came to see other Christian people who were successful, and they had the lives that I wanted to move after. I began to see that they trusted God for sure. But then every single day they got up and they did the work. Okay. So I'm saying all this to say, don't email me and say, well, I don't believe in this because I just trust God, so I don't want to trust myself. That's the wrong way to look at it. Okay. I'm going to tell you that's the wrong way to look at it. You might get upset about that, but it's the wrong way to look at it. Yes, we trust God. But then every day we get up and we toil the ground, and we get up and we show up, and we get to work and we do the hard stuff, and we don't quit. Okay. And we keep pressing forward because we are self-reliant. Yes, we trust God, but we understand that he created us, and he didn't create a bunch of dummies. Okay. I get passionate about that because I have people who've yelled at me before on that. And why are you talking about trusting yourself? You need to just know. I'm just trying to tell you, you trust God, and then you get up and you do the work and you become self-reliant, and you understand that as you make better decisions, you can trust the decisions you're going to make in the future. Final thing that I want to read here, page 5, it says, what I must do is all that concerns me, not what the people think. This rule, equally arduous in actual and in intellectual life, may serve for the whole distinction between greatness and meanness. It is the harder because you will always find those who think they know what your duty, who think they know what is your duty better than you know it. It is easy in the world to live after the world's opinion. It is easy in solitude to live after our own. But the great man is he who in the midst of the crowd keeps with perfect sweetness the independence of solitude. I'm going to read that line one more time. But the great man or great woman is he or she who in the midst of the crowd keeps with perfect sweetness the independence of solitude. I just want you to tell me, what do you think is the independence of solitude? And what does that mean to you? So what is it, and what does it mean to you? So again, a lot of reflection this week. I want you to really think about this idea of self-reliance, okay? If you get a chance, download the PDF, read it. It's going to add a lot of value to you. Thanks so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you on the next video. All the questions are in there. They're not at the end, okay? So you can't, if you came right here, you're looking for the questions, you got to go back, you got to watch the whole thing. There's about 6 questions that are in the entire video, maybe 6 or 7. So feel free to go back and watch. Hey, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.